So today, I will be talking about different online resources you can use when preparing for your class. My name is Abigail B. Capitin Principe, and I hope I'd be able to share some useful information to everyone here. Let me begin by talking about the learning management systems. So learning management systems, I'm sure as many of you know, it's a software that is designed specifically to create, distribute, and manage the delivery of educational content. An LMS is supposed to help us switch from using paper to digital. For classroom preparation, an LMS is very important for organizing class activities in one site or in one area. Now, one important thing when you're preparing for class is you have to have some place where you put everything in digitally. So it's like having your very own sort of organizer, but instead of paper form, it's a digital form. So having one area to put all your activities, this is what makes an LMS useful for many classes. There are many kinds of learning management systems. Usually, each university has their own system. If you look at the slide, there are 3 examples of learning management systems. One is Web Class, the other one is Web Campus, and Campus Square. I have experience using all these, and it is quite a learning process. But like I said, the good thing about an LMS is having one area to store your digital class materials. For this presentation, I would like to talk about 2 learning management systems that would help professors prepare for their classes. These learning management systems are commercially available and are more commonly used globally. The first is Google Classroom. Google Classroom is free for anyone with a Gmail account. There is, however, a paid version called the G Suite, and it's available for institutions or companies. I think many of you now probably has had the experience of using Google Classroom. Very briefly, let me talk about the pros and cons of Google Classroom. One very good thing for me about Google Classroom is that it is relatively easy to use and makes online class preparation more organized, especially since most of us already know how to use Google Forms or how to access Gmail. I guess most of us have a Gmail account. One thing I like about Google Classroom is it allows for scheduled uploads of materials and activities. For me, scheduled uploads is very important because it gives teachers the option to decide when to make the class materials or the assignments available. So when you're preparing your class, for example, you're preparing it, say, on a Sunday or maybe on a Monday, and the class is not until Tuesday or Thursday, you can decide to upload it or make it available on specific days and times. So for class preparation, I think this is a very useful option. Now, the thing I don't like about Google Classroom is it does not allow scheduling of multiple classes. For example, if you have the same assignment for 2 classes, because those are the same classes, you will have to upload and schedule these individually. So instead of like having a batch setup where you schedule all the assignments for all the classes at once, for Google Classroom, you have to schedule them individually. It's not such a bad deal. Although I think having the option of batch scheduling or scheduling them at the same time, it's useful. It's not entirely a deal breaker. So it's a con, but it's not a very bad con. Who knows? Maybe someday Google will update and make that option available. The second learning management system I would like to talk about is Microsoft Teams. I'm sure some of you have had experience using Microsoft Teams as well. Microsoft Teams is a collaborative platform, originally made for business, but works well as a learning management system. It comes free with a Microsoft 365 account. I think that's maybe one of the cons. If you don't have a Microsoft 365, it's gonna be hard to use Microsoft Teams. So from my experience, Microsoft Teams accounts are usually made by the university or the institution or the school where you work for. One good thing about Microsoft Teams is that it really integrates everything in one platform. You can make your class materials, you can create the assignments, upload videos, share links, make quizzes, and grade students all in one area. When you're preparing for your classes, that kind of full integration is really quite helpful. Now for the con. The thing that is a bit daunting about Microsoft Teams is it takes a bit more time to learn. It often has too many similar looking tools to add to the confusion. Because of all the options available on Microsoft Teams, some of the options look very similar, do the same things, and so it's kind of hard to pick which one to learn first. And there are so many things to learn. For example, OneNote and Notebook. If you know Microsoft Teams, some professors use either OneNote or Notebook. They look very similar. Incidentally, I do not use either of those because everything else for me in Microsoft Teams works fine without the need for OneNote or Notebook. So that's the problem with Microsoft Teams. There's just too much of stuff you can use, and you don't really have to use everything. So you have to learn to pick and choose. Now I'd like to talk about other online resources that teachers can use. Class Timetable is a free app that color codes classes into an easy-to-see calendar. So I kind of like my calendars to be very colorful. So that's why I like using this app. So if you have a lot of classes to organize, color coding on your tablet or your mobile phone would sometimes really help. Another app that I often use is Quizlet. I was using Quizlet even before the pandemic hit. It's an app that encourages vocabulary learning. It works on the website, so you can use it even without downloading the app. Now, this is useful because within Quizlet, there are many pre-made vocabulary lists. So it might help you if you find a list there that matches what you want to teach for the class for that day. Also, when you make a list on Quizlet, you can use it in other classes or in other semesters. So it stays there unless you erase it or something. So it makes preparation time a little bit easier by giving you a lot of resources with which you can use to teach vocabulary. Now, the last two resources I am going to talk about are my two favorites. So the first is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a video recording platform that is easy to set up and use. It is very useful for educators who like to make short videos for students. Flipgrid makes recording, editing, and uploading a lot simpler than the more commonly used video editing software. Flipgrid is very common in the United States for elementary schools. So they're very serious about protecting the privacy of students. So that's another thing that I like about Flipgrid. And students seem to like using Flipgrid. Flipgrid is helpful when preparing for classes, because when you set up your Flipgrid to use for your classes, you can divide your classes into groups, and within those groups are specific topics. So you can all do this at the beginning of the semester, and you can edit it anytime, and you can upload it based on the schedule that you want. So, like I said, with both Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, Flipgrid allows for scheduled uploads. So it helps you to manage your time when you know that you can schedule the upload and you don't have to upload it on that day, and you can have enough time to prepare for it before you upload instructions for your students. And in the same way, you also have control over who sees your students' videos. There's an option on Flipgrid that allows only the teacher to see the videos. It's called video moderation. So you have a lot of control. Once the videos are uploaded, you can look at it, evaluate it, and then you can decide whether or not you will show the other students the videos. Now, if your activity requires that everybody sees everybody else's videos, you can also do that. So there's a lot of things you can do with Flipgrid. It's very useful for speaking classes. Now, the last and probably my most favorite resource is called Bitmoji. It's an app that you can use to create a little cartoon version of yourself. So you may have noticed that in my slides, I have this little cartoon. And it's supposed to represent me. Bitmojis are fun to use and adds a little more personality in preparing online classes. It's an app that lets you create an avatar or a cartoon that represents yourself. Now, the thing about Bitmoji, for you to be able to use it, you will have to use a Chrome extension. It's not as complicated as it sounds. When you use your browser, you'd have to use Chrome, and then you can download the Bitmoji app onto your Chrome, and it'll tell you how to download the extension. And you can use Bitmojis with Word or PowerPoint, like here, like in my presentation. I used a lot of Bitmojis. And it kind of helps the students identify your classes and identify your lessons immediately. So it's sort of like a little fun cartoon you can do with your students. And to sum up the presentation, there are many online resources out there to help us prepare for our classes. When using online resources, it is important to identify your institution's online system. Even though if it's complicated or everything is in Japanese, and if you're not a Japanese speaker or a reader, it's still advisable to put in that extra time to try and learn your institution's online learning management system. Another thing to do is to identify whether or not you will be using a mainstream LMS, and then spend some time learning the basics. By mainstream LMS, I mean something like Google Classroom or MS Teams. And I'm sure all teachers know this. Try to find ways of making your prep time a little bit fun. For instance, using game-like apps like Quizlet, or adding cartoon interfaces like Bitmoji. Thank you for your time, and I hope I was able to share some useful information. My information is up there. You can email me, follow my Instagram. I'm Nagoya Camera on Instagram. Or you can follow me at my Facebook, Be My Friend. Look for ABIEPRINCIPE. That's Abby Principe on Facebook. Thank you for your time.